My father laughed and lifted his glass, as though toasting to a private joke I wasn't meant to understand. He said my sister had earned everything through her own effort, always keeping her eyes on him, not like me. The table went silent. My mother's hand froze above the serving spoon. I leaned back, feeling a sharp pressure bloom in my chest, and replied quietly that I would stop sending them money. The color drained from his face. He asked what money I was talking about, but the answer hung heavy in the air before I could speak again. The truth had been hiding inside that house for years, and that night it finally spoke. That was the evening I stopped being the quiet one. Before I tell you how everything fell apart after that, tell me, where are you listening from? I'd like to know I'm not the only one who's ever had to decide that silence was no longer peace. From the outside, we seemed like a family people might envy. Sunday dinners, polished smiles framed on the walls, coordinated sweaters on Christmas cards. But perfection photographs better than it lives. My name is Claire Whitmore. I am 32, the quiet daughter. The one who learned early that keeping peace sometimes means swallowing your own truth. Olivia, 2 years older, was always the golden child. Teachers adored her, neighbors bragged about her, and our parents wore her success like a medal they had both earned. My father, Thomas, ruled the household the way he once ran his restaurant. Every opinion filtered through him before it could exist. My mother, gentle but worn down, spent her years turning his pride into soft apologies no one ever requested. When the recession struck, they began falling behind on their mortgage. I had just begun working at an architecture firm, barely steady myself, but I told my mother I'd help until things evened out. I sent $5,000 each month, quietly and responsibly. My father didn't trust online banking, claiming computers were thieves in disguise, so I wired everything to Olivia's account. She insisted it was easier that way, that she'd pass the cash or write a check directly to them. I believed her. Believing her had always been part of the family rhythm. Those transfers soon became routine. Another bill for peace. Each month, I sent the money and waited for gratitude that never arrived. When my father mentioned that the mortgage was finally under control, I felt a small spark of relief, thinking I had truly helped. Occasionally, Olivia sent a text, handled. Nothing more. Still, something about the situation felt off. The last time I visited, the house seemed tired, its paint peeling, the refrigerator groaning under its own age. My mother smiled through it all and said softly, "Olivia's helping us manage things." I wanted to believe her. I really did. That night, while my father turned up the evening news and Olivia scrolled through her phone, I sat at the same table I'd known since childhood, staring at the family photo above the fireplace, for smiling faces with one missing truth. The cracks in that perfect picture had been there all along. I just hadn't looked closely enough to see them. Dinner that evening mirrored countless others before it, too polite to be honest. The good plates were out, the ones reserved for holidays. The smell of rosemary chicken drifted through the air, familiar and comforting, like childhood before silence learned how to wound. My father poured another glass of wine, surveying the table like an actor preparing to deliver his lines, and smiled proudly toward Olivia. He spoke of her intuition and drive, declaring that she had figured everything out on her own. His gaze met mine, but the admiration wasn't meant for me. It landed like a splinter beneath the skin, small, sharp, and impossible to ignore. I said I was happy for her, the same way I'd said it my entire life. My mother nodded absently, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for the potatoes. Then my father chuckled and added that Olivia had done it without a single handout. The air in the room shifted. The clink of his glass sounded too loud, too final. I could have smiled, could have swallowed the moment as I always had, but something in me refused. I leaned back and heard my voice, calm but unshakable, telling him I'd stop sending money. Everything stopped. Even the refrigerator's hum seemed to vanish. My mother's spoon hovered midair. Olivia's fork slipped and hit her plate. My father blinked twice, confusion flickering across his face before he asked what money I was talking about. His tone wasn't angry, it was sincere, bewildered, and that made it worse. I told him about the $5,000 I'd been wiring to Olivia every month since the previous April, meant for them. He frowned, disbelieving. My mother turned to Olivia. her face draining of color. Olivia straightened, her voice brittle as she claimed I was exaggerating, that there had been delays, late transfers. I interrupted, steady and certain, explaining that every payment had gone through on the first of the month and that I had the confirmations to prove it. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was precise and cutting like a scalpel. My father turned toward Olivia. "We never saw a cent," he said. Olivia's jaw tightened. She murmured something about expenses, about investments. I asked what kind of investment swallowed $60,000 and left nothing in return. Her eyes flashed, accusing me of not understanding risk, of only believing in things that were safe. I told her believing in family shouldn't feel unsafe at all. My mother's voice trembled as she asked Olivia if it was true. Olivia looked away and said it was complicated. The food on the table had gone cold. I stood, pushing my chair back slowly, and told them it was her problem now. My father's hand tightened around the edge of the table, his knuckles pale. He looked at Olivia again, but she couldn't meet his eyes. And in that small, fragile breath between truth and denial, I knew the house would never sound the same again. That night, the house did not sleep. Every wall seemed to breathe with us, heavy and unsettled. I lay in my old bedroom, staring at the faint glow of the plastic stars I'd stuck to the ceiling when I was 16. Down the hall, voices murmured, my mother crying, my father pacing. Olivia's door stayed shut. I turned on the lamp, opened my laptop and fell back into habit, checking payments, transfers, statements, because when everything else collapses, the truth has to live somewhere, even if it's just in the numbers. Each transaction glared back at me from the screen like a quiet accusation. $5,000 on the first day of every month. My digital fingerprints marking a betrayal I hadn't even intended to commit. $60,000 in total. Gone. The next morning, my father sat at the kitchen table, his head cradled in his hands. My mother stood by the window, her coffee untouched, the steam long vanished. Her voice came out in a whisper, something about the money being tied up. In what exactly? A company? I asked sharper than I meant to be. A company doesn't eat mortgage payments. It eats trust. My father's jaw clenched, his eyes bloodshot and distant. We'll talk to her when she wakes up, he said finally. But Olivia never woke up, at least not in that house. By the time the sun rose, her car was gone from the driveway. Her room stood empty, except for the faint scent of perfume and a single sticky note resting on the dresser. Don't overreact. I'll fix it. I stared at the words until they blurred into nothing. She's not fixing anything, I murmured. She's running. My mother began to cry again, quiet, fractured sobs that filled the silence. My father grabbed his coat, muttering about going after her, but I stopped him. You can't chase her without proof. Let me handle this. He hesitated, torn between disbelief and exhaustion, then gave a slow, uncertain nod. That day, I did what Olivia never expected. I treated the mess like an architectural problem. I mapped it from the foundation upward. Every transaction, every message, every weak point where the money had shifted hands. Each record confirmed the same thing. The funds had landed in Olivia's account, every single time. That evening, Daniel stopped by. The glow of my laptop lit our faces in the dim room. You're going deep into this, he said quietly. I have to, I answered. This isn't just about money. It's about how long she thought she could lie to me and still get away with it. He nodded slowly. So what's next? The bank, I said. Then a lawyer. At the branch, the manager's frown deepened as she scrolled through the records. All of these were redirected, she said, pointing at Olivia's account. The account holder made several private transfers afterward. Looks like the funds went through another intermediary. To who? I asked. She hesitated. A man named Adrian Cole. The moment I heard it, something in me settled into place. A name, a direction, a trail. When I stepped outside, the January air felt like ice and clarity at once. I pulled my coat tighter, whispering to myself, you wanted to play with trust, Olivia. Fine. Let's see how much the truth costs. 3 mornings later, just after sunrise, the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen with my mother, both of us running on caffeine and exhaustion. My father was upstairs, sorting through papers he no longer believed in. When I opened the door, a man stood on the porch. Jeans hoodie, a smile too polished to be real. "Morning," he said casually. "You must be Claire." "I'm Adrian." The name hit like a stone. "Olivia's Adrian?" He chuckled. "I suppose you could call me that." Behind me, I heard my father's footsteps descend the stairs, slow, deliberate. He came to stand beside me. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice flat. Adrian raised a small folder like it was an olive branch. "Just clearing up a misunderstanding. Olivia asked me to drop these off, proof of our investment." My mother appeared in the doorway, pale and trembling. "Investment?" she whispered. "Startup work," Adrian replied smoothly. "We're building an app to connect local artisans with clients. Scalable. Innovative. You know how it is." I stepped aside. "Show us." He entered like he belonged there, laying glossy printouts across the table. Fake charts, mock-ups, buzzwords stacked on buzzwords. Phase 1 projections, beta launch, growth curve. Not one figure made sense. My father flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening. "This is nonsense," he said. Adrian's practiced grin faltered. "Every big thing starts small." 60,000 small, I shot back. He met my eyes, still pretending calm. "You've been talking to Olivia." "No," I said. "I've been talking to the bank." The room shifted. My mother gripped the back of a chair. My father's breathing grew ragged. Adrian leaned against the counter, his tone light but his gaze calculating. "You don't understand," he said softly. "She believed in me." "And you let her," I said. "Because it paid your rent." Before he could respond, the crunch of tires echoed outside. I turned toward the window. Olivia's white sedan rolled into the driveway. She stepped out. Sunglasses, perfect hair, expensive coat. The moment she saw Adrian inside, her expression fractured. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. He softened instantly. "Babe, I told you I'd fix it." Her jaw tightened. "You weren't supposed to come." My father's voice was low, dangerous. "You took your sister's money. You lied to us." Olivia's eyes darted between us. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it," I said. "Because $60,000 vanished, the mortgage fell behind, and somehow he's driving a new car." She glared at Adrian. "You said we'd double it in a year." He shrugged. "Plans change." My father's fist slammed against the table, rattling the glasses. "You stole from your own family." Olivia flinched but held on to her story. "It's not stealing if it's an investment. We just needed more time." My mother's voice cracked. "We skipped our payments because we trusted you." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. I took a step toward Adrian. "So what's your real job?" He smirked. "I'm an entrepreneur." "Funny," I said. "Because your last business still owes back child support." His expression twitched. Olivia's head snapped toward me. "What are you talking about?" I held up my phone. "The woman with the toddler who came by yesterday. She's been looking for him." Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. "You lied to me," she whispered. Adrian sighed, sounding more annoyed than guilty. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing," I said. My father moved around the table until he stood inches from him. "You're leaving this house. Now." Adrian's grin vanished. "You can't stop her from seeing me. She's an adult." Olivia's voice shook. "I'm not going anywhere with you." When he reached for her arm, instinct took over. I stepped between them. "Don't touch her." Outside, sirens began to wail, growing louder by the second. Adrian froze, his expression hardening. "What did you do?" I met his stare. "Just returning the favor," I said calmly. "I called the police an hour ago." The flashing lights splashed red and blue across the walls as the officers entered. One of them asked, "Adrian Cole?" He took a step back, laughing nervously. "This is a mistake," he said, but his voice cracked when they cuffed him. Olivia collapsed into a chair, trembling. My father leaned against the counter, pale and silent, while my mother cried into her hands. As they let Adrian out, he turned his head toward me, whispering, "You think you've won. There's always another version of me out there." I met his gaze. "Then I hope she finds someone like me, too." The door closed behind him, and the house finally exhaled. 2 weeks later, the police called. They had uncovered evidence of multiple scams. 5 women, all sharing the same story and the same empty promises. Adrian had pleaded guilty. The prosecutor wanted Olivia's testimony to solidify the case. First, she refused. "I can't face him again," she murmured. "You already did," I reminded her. "And you survived it." In court, Olivia sat beside me, her voice soft but steady as she described how Adrian had convinced her to invest, how my transfers had become his seed money. When he tried to meet her eyes, she didn't flinch. When the verdict came, 3 years in prison, 18 months without parole, the courtroom fell silent. There was no celebration, only relief. My father's hand found mine beneath the table. My mother cried quietly. Olivia exhaled, her breath sounding like surrender. Adrian's last look was met with nothing. We stepped outside into the cold daylight. For the first time, it didn't sting, it felt clean. That night back home, I stood in the backyard holding a small box. Photographs, receipts, notes in Adrian's handwriting. Olivia stood beside me, her shoulders lighter than I had ever seen them. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked. She nodded. "It doesn't mean anything now." I struck a match. The flames curled through the papers, turning everything he'd touched into smoke. We watched it rise into the January sky until all that remained was ash. "He took so much from me," Olivia whispered. "Then make sure he never takes another inch," I said. By spring, she had found a modest job at an office downtown. My mother returned to her garden. My father finally repaired the porch railing he'd ignored for years. The silence that once felt cruel had softened into peace. One afternoon, Olivia handed me an envelope. Inside was a photograph of us as children at the county fair. Missing teeth, sticky fingers, faces full of laughter before we knew what betrayal meant. On the back she had written, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." I didn't speak. I just pulled her into a hug. For once, the house didn't need words to stay standing. The weeks after the trial felt strange, as if the air inside the house had been rewired. My mother kept the curtains open again, letting the sunlight spill across the kitchen floor. My father took long morning walks, his shoulders finally relaxed. And Olivia, she no longer tried to perform. No flawless hair, no perfume, no defenses. Just a quiet woman relearning herself. Her new job wasn't glamorous, but she said it felt honest. Every evening, she came home with a lunchbox and tired hands, the kind that came from work, not regret. Sometimes, I'd find her in the garden with our mother, planting herbs. Rosemary, the same scent that had once filled the room the night it all began. One evening, my father sat beside me while I sorted bills. "I think we made her this way," he said quietly. "We kept calling her special until she believed she couldn't fail." I looked up. "We all played our part. But we're fixing it now." He nodded, exhaling. "I'm proud of you, Claire." The words landed deeper than I expected. Maybe because it was the first time he'd said them without comparison. Later, Olivia joined us with 3 mugs of tea. "We'll be okay," she said, half to herself, half to us. And for the first time in years, I believed her. The house was quiet again. Not the kind that hides pain, but the kind built from truth. A month later, I packed my suitcase for Seattle. A new job, a clean start. Morning light poured through the kitchen windows as my mother folded laundry, and my father read the paper like old times. Olivia walked me to the car, sleeves pushed up, a faint smile on her face. "You're really leaving," she said. "It's time I answered," I replied. She slipped an envelope into my hand. A photo of us as kids, cheeks sticky with cotton candy. On the back, she had written, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to see what's worth keeping." As I drove away, I glanced once in the rearview mirror. The house looked smaller but somehow lighter. Family doesn't break you unless you let it. If this story hit close to home, share yours in the comments and subscribe for more.